This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for
Next Generation Manufacturing.
They're doing a
Summer Teachers Workshop.
No, that one, well, they are, but that one's all filled up. But they can't. But folks, the good people can join a
community of practice.
Look, you or I like with a hive mind. That is on July 10th from 1 to 2 p.m. You can learn more at nextgenmfg.org. This is in partnership with the NAAIC, the National Applied Artificial Intelligence Consortium, and Amtech. I heard Amtech on another meeting I was on last week. Those are the folks doing really cool stuff around advanced manufacturing and education.
Cool.
Liz, we need a summer intern.
I know.
Yeah. So if you have a kid, again, if you're listening and you're that age, very cool.
Yeah.
If you have a child that age, so you got a 20-year-old, a college kid, whatever, that's good at video editing and social media, we would love to chat with them. And because we got all sorts of cool work that they can do with us this summer at ChatEDU. You can email us at chateduvance.org. Liz, economists use the term ideal worker to describe an individual who gives everything to a technology wave, which results in less time at home for the partner and less time for domestic work. Typically, it's male, just this is how it's shaking out. So I share this with you, and I gaze at you across our laptops. Do you know why?
Because I don't do any domestic care work.
I'm just wondering if you are an ideal worker because you are wrapped up, you are caught in the wave of agentic AI, and you're vibe coding your socks off, and you have delegated all the domestic chores and home life responsibility to your spouse.
I did that regardless of AI and my relationship with technology. I am not vibe coding my socks off. I am knitting my socks off.
Well, in a way, you were so if the ideal worker caught a technology wave, it might have been the loom that was the wave that caught you.
Yes.
In like 1999 or something. Well, a little bit later than that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, with that, you can meet the sad wives of AI. This is a great piece. I read it in Wired magazine. The rapid growth of AI is causing significant strain on domestic family dynamics, especially among white-collar couples in the Bay Area. What else is happening here?
Yeah, so these tech-focused husbands are pouring their time and emotional energy into AI startups and market opportunities, leaving their wives to handle the domestic workload and provide uncompensated emotional support. The imbalance is widening the household gender gap, escalating marital tension, and prompting some spouses to look for chatbots for relationship validation.
There's some delicious irony. The quote here is fantastic. What does Alessandra Ram have to say about this phenomena?
But that's the thing. There are two babies in this household now, the small human one and the large language model. Both demand constant attention. Both keep us up at 2 a.m.
Okay. I don't think there's anything else to say. Adam, send us an email at chatedu@edadvance.org and let us know your perspective. And so I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm the spouse of Adam Rade. I am Liz Rade.
And this is ChatEDU, the show about leading and learning and running away in the age of AI.
How does Michelle feel about all of this?
You know, I almost shared this story with her and I took a pass. In today's episode, AI on the Sidelines, near real-time coaching for every educator, we're going to dig into Urban Assembly's Project Cafe, super cool project, and more with their organization's CEO, David Adams, in a little interview we're going to do in just a beat.
But let's talk about what's on the show this week. We'll kick off with a look at how Google's NotebookLM is introducing automatic Google Drive syncing.
Something that I thought they had already been doing. I think I've told many workshop participants they do, so that's cool. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the multimodal functions in NotebookLM. I think something some of us use, but not everybody.
Next, we'll dive into a cluster of stories highlighting recent AI failures and breakdowns, starting with a massive $100 million lawsuit from a Pizza Hut franchisee, a surprising reversal from Starbucks, a new investigation showing chatbot inaccuracy rates, and a troubling trend where fake academic journals are publishing AI-generated papers.
Nothing to see here. All right, then we're going to look at how persistent memory features in major chatbots can backfire, latching onto stale, outdated, and highly sensitive personal data.
Then we'll return specifically to our K-12 beat with a major announcement from American Federation of Teachers.
Next, we're going to look at a very different perspective with older students and where school superintendents and digital natives are teaming up with MIT experts.
And we'll end the rundown with a fantastic local story close to home in Connecticut from New Haven's Engineering and Science University Magnet School.
Go ESOMs! The Then we're going to go to Beneath the Surface with CEO David Adams.
And of course, we'll end with another great Bright Bite.
All right, listen, Liz, we're 113 episodes in, and the reality is sometimes we say stuff that people are just like in their car going, no, I disagree. I don't think that's right. And frankly, you're probably right, or at least we'd love to have your perspective. So, of course, a listener near and dear to us, like the guy who signs our checks, we were talking last week about the story with Yale and Harvard. What was the gist there?
Well, particularly the Harvard story where they are going to limit A's to 20% plus 4 of the class being allowed to get an A.
The +4 is the best part. And so we said that it was in part a little bit about AI and grade inflation, and we got a long email from someone explaining why we were wrong. And my first reaction was, fantastic. Record it, and we'll put it on the podcast. And frankly, it's an invitation, so we'll play that in just a second, but it's an invitation to any of you out there. The more voices involved in this conversation, like this thing is not simple. This entire AI and education workforce development enterprise is not simple, and the sands are shifting. So please, if we say something you don't agree with, we'll love it. Doesn't mean we're necessarily going to play it, but there's a pretty damn good chance we will. We would love it if you would email that audio file to chatedU@edadvance.org, or if it's something that Liz particularly said that you disagree with, that's radday, RADDAY, @edadvance.org.
Yeah, I know no one has ever disagreed with Mervis. That's MERVIS @edadvance.org.
All right, take it away, boss.
Hi, I'm just thankful for Matt and Liz giving me a chance to respond to a story that they had on last week's pod. I found myself screaming at my phone listening to the story about the bell curve and the grade restrictions at Harvard and Yale. It's astonishing to me that such smart people would make a policy decision based on such ridiculous assumptions, because essentially any distribution of grades based on so many percentage of something can only be given to a small group are based on a talent distribution of a bell curve, right? So you take any particular skill in the general population, you have a few people who are really good at it and a few people who aren't really good at it, and 85% or more are like 3 standard deviations from the mean. The problem is the students at Harvard and Yale are not a normal population. They basically accept 7% of the 40,000 people that apply, only 3% of the general population. So you already have a skewed group of very talented, very smart people. And then to say to them that at the start of the year, we know not all of you are going to be successful. Some of you cannot possibly ever get an A, no matter how well you do, because we're going to create this artificial curve of grades, just makes absolutely no sense. Plus, if it is inspired in any way by a fear of AI creating grade inflation, what this policy is actually going to do is push people to AI. Because if I'm sitting next to you in class and I have a question or a comment and I need your help, why would I help you get the A that only one of us can have? So it's actually going to force students to go to AI instead of to their peers, and basically create every classroom at Harvard and Yale as the Lord of the Flies. Who's going to get theirs? It is insane. And I think the unintended consequences will lead to a rethinking of this in short order. But it is a crazy story, and I just could not help myself but respond. And I appreciate taking the time to let me do it.
I think you made a good point.
Yes, I agree. All right, Liz, I don't know, do participants in workshops ask you all the time, like, are Google Drive stuff in my notebook automatically syncing as I update the data?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that all the time. And I thought it has been going on, but apparently maybe it's a little fresher than I realized. So from the Google Workspace blog, Google has introduced automatic Google Drive syncing for NotebookLM, eliminating the need to manually update uploaded Google Docs, Sheets, slides, and the like.
So in the past, if you were uploading if you put a Google Doc into your notebook, I thought it would just automatically update as I'm adding information to that doc.
I think I found as people were working with like Google Sheets and stuff that were dynamic and changing, they just reported that they weren't seeing those fresh updates. But now this does that. But it gets kind of squirrely, right? I could tell why it took a little while because there are edge cases, right? So you've got like maybe someone like deletes your access to the file or the file gets deleted. So especially for things that are not natively your own. Yeah, no admin control is needed for this. It's just kind of live, ready to go. Rollout began last week. Today's June 1st. So it began in the end of May. It takes about 15 days for full visibility.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, totally. That's from the Google blog. We'll put that in the show notes. Liz, do you put like many pictures into your notebooks in your NotebookLM?
Not really, but after reading the story, I am in a battle with my serger, which is a sewing machine.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time with my friend Gemini yesterday sending pictures back and forth.
Which Adam makes Liz the ideal worker. All right. So tell us a little bit about the story. This is kind of a first-person narrative from XDA, which is kind of like a cool, geeky developer and, IT comics blog. This is Nolan Junker.
Okay, so he talks about upgrading NotebookLM to Gemini 3, and that transformed the platform's image upload capabilities from basic text scanning into full multimodal visual understanding. So this shift allowed him to establish a highly efficient design workflow using filtered screenshots and real-world photos rather than the dense, unfiltered text documents or videos.
One of his use cases is a theme-free notebook, because I'm kind of obsessed about like what's the point of the notebook. So he does this theme-free notebook with miscellaneous screenshots and real-world photos, allowing them to capture items without immediately categorizing them. So like here's just random visual, inputs, right? Because just to be clear, those who haven't played with this, when you go to add sources in the left-hand panel of your notebook, whether the notebook is already established, it's a brand new one of the first options is upload. And most people think, I'm uploading PDFs, but you absolutely can upload image files there too. And, there's a lot of interesting use cases. We thought we'd run through a couple here from like a student and teacher perspective. But, I've got teachers very often talk about like, taking snapshots, and because you can do screen grabs too. So the ability to take screenshots from lots of different like, testing data analysis, but all sorts of other stuff. So what could students do here with photos in this situation?
A lot of different things. So photos of complex textbook pages that have like anatomical structures, chemical bonds, geometry proofs. The model can then quiz them on that, the relationships between those visual components, photograph drafts of multi-step math problems, lab setups across different stages of an assignment, which they would be able to use those to find errors or, where mistakes in logic happened.
Yeah, one of my favorite teacher use cases is fun. So if you're a teacher that's still kind of like rocking the whiteboard in an important way, especially like math and chem and all sorts of STEMmy fields, but, I think all sorts of things, the ability to just take a photo of your whiteboard at the end of a class, a college session, whatever the case may be, and then day after day upload those into a notebook, and they become like this visual repository that then you and or students can do all the notebooky stuff, ask questions, do things in the studios, make flashcards and quizzes and presentations. Gets really interesting. There's also data, right? So what can teachers or administrators do with data that's kind of like visual?
Yeah, they can take screenshots of like student performance graphs, enrollment charts, state assessment tables, and then look for patterns, correlations across multiple pieces of data. So that's pretty cool. I'm thinking about this for LEAP.
That's the Learner Engagement
and Attendance Program.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge program that Connecticut's rocking, quite honestly. Yeah, a use case I really enjoyed. I have a group of elementary schools, and they keep all their referral data. So like this is when like little kids do naughty things or naughty adjacent things, and they keep them in binders, and the binders are in lots of different places. Like, so the nurses got some, the bus drivers got some, the attendance officers got some, and it's very like disparate data because it's in different parts of the building, and also it's all handwritten, right? They just want these things to be easy and accessible, and so they just started taking pictures of all that stuff, put them into notebooks, and then suddenly they got this like really rich data set from these it's pictures, but it's pictures of handwritten notes. So they were able to convert into that notebook. Yeah.
They're okay with the data privacy?
Yeah. Well, it's NotebookLM, right? So that you're inside the veil,
school,
the veil of secrets.
I still think one of my biggest struggles with Notebook is that it seems like such a commitment to create a notebook in a different way than it feels like making a doc. I'll make a doc for anything.
No.
And like...
Yeah, no. I mean, the upload button, you have to upload a file. I mean, God,
No, I'm
As
just,
we had to attach files to
Okay.
emails and stuff,
You're
I would
sort
never
of-
attach a file to email. I mean, who would go through the effort of clicking the paperclip and then,
okay, your sarcasm is not appreciated this morning.
okay.
I'm just saying, like, I still hit this like block of not always starting a notebook for things that probably could be done with Notebook really easily. But I think it just seems like a different kind of like, I'm starting a notebook, which is different than just like a Google Doc. I don't know. It
Huh.
just,
Is it the name that's really the
Yeah.
boundary here?
well, I think it is.
What should we call the thing?
I don't know.
A slip?
I have no idea.
A sticky? I'm making a sticky. No, that doesn't sound right.
but Please cut all of that.
No, don't cut that out. It's good. All right. We've established. Yeah, we've established that Liz doesn't do therapy, but this could be a topic worthy of. So,
Commitment phobe.
one last use case I thought was kind of cool is that at the higher ed and building level, like administrators scanning legacy documents, architectural blueprints, historical campus photos, making this like cool visual archive of a physical campus over time, which might be kind of neat.
Yeah, cool.
All right, Liz, up next is a new segment I'm calling That's a Pretty Damn Small Foothill.
Okay, so first you need to explain, and I think we need to define the singularity because I think this went over a lot of people's heads.
Okay, so what is it?
Okay, so the technological singularity is this theoretical future point when artificial intelligence surpasses human intellect. So there's going to be these rapid, uncontrollable changes to civilization.
Right, they call this RSI, which is recursive self-improvement. So the models start getting faster and faster because they're basically teaching themselves.
Okay.
All right, sometimes people also refer to this as the Cambrian moment.
Demis Hassabis is saying that we are standing at the foothills of the singularity, like the singularity is close.
Yeah, so this is Ray Kurzweil. He originally predicted that it was going to happen in 2045, although I think Kurzweil has backed his timeline. But yes, it's like AGI. Like people are like, what does that really mean? But, it's where there's this huge transformation where human society changes unpredictably because we have these, recursive self-improving machines that get smarter and smarter, on their own independently.
Right.
So yes, Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google's DeepMind, their AI division, at Google I/O a couple of weeks ago said we are standing in the foothills of the singularity. And everybody was like, oh, what does it mean, right? So I couldn't help but notice these stories this week, and so I decided to have this new section called That's a Pretty Damn Small Foothill. Okay, so here we go. First, Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
What happened with Pizza Hut?
So there's a Pizza Hut franchisee that says AI caused $100 million in damages. Chack Pizza Northeast filed a lawsuit against franchisor Yum Brands in the Business Court of Texas First Division, alleging that Pizza Hut's Dragontail AI system caused major operational breakdowns, increased delivery times, and severely damaged sales. The franchisee operates 111 locations and relies heavily on third-party delivery via DoorDash, and it claims the software integration stripped restaurant managers of delivery order assignment power and led to an estimated $100 million loss in business and enterprise value.
I love it's called Dragontail AI. It sounds so cool. I mean, didn't seem to work well, but yeah, right. All right, then we have Starbucks. This one's interesting because you and I both do, especially me, I do some like hospitality adjacent AI work.
Yeah.
So what happened with Starbucks is we talk a lot about AI vision, different from the NotebookLM story just now, but the ability of AI vision to capture things and make visual meaning of them. It's in both of our courses, all this kind of stuff.
Right. So Starbucks actually scrapped an AI inventory tool across North America. So they were using an AI-powered inventory counting program across North American stores, and they have canceled it just 9 months after its deployment. The tool was developed with Nomad Go, and it was intended to automate milk and beverage inventory checks using like cameras on tablets and LiDAR data. But the application frequently miscounted and mislabeled items, leading the company to discontinue the program in favor of standardizing traditional counting methods and shifting their focus to supply chain execution and daily replenishments.
Yeah, we've tried this with our food services folks where we take pictures of, walk-in coolers and stock shelves and just try to do inventory control on it. But obviously at scale, it doesn't work well. I love one of the Starbucks employees. What was the quote?
Thanks for discontinuing automatic counting. The thought behind it was great, but the execution was proving difficult.
Okay, right. All right, so we got Dragontail, then we got counting, then we got fact-checking. So this is from Wired Magazine. Again, AI just isn't right. What's happening here?
So a professional fact-checker tests major artificial intelligence models against standard fact-checking protocols and found that their accuracy levels were highly unreliable. So Mark Frankel is the head of public affairs for Full Fact, and he said you definitely need a human being. So about half of Americans use artificial intelligence to find information and generate ideas because of a perceived lack of reliable online spaces. But a March 2025 study from the TOE Center for Digital Journalism revealed that over 60% of responses from AI-powered search engines were inaccurate.
So this is like the AI mode in Google that just has taken over all of Google search, essentially.
Yeah, a separate BBC study indicated that chatbot inaccuracy rates are close to 45%, meaning AI can be wrong roughly half the time. Benchmark tests like OpenAI's Simple QA resulted in accuracy scores below 50% for all tested models, and Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro led a modified test with a 55.6% accuracy.
Yes, these numbers are pretty consistent across different models and different testing schemes. Yeah, I think even, especially when the data, these AI search summaries are really important, like medical information. I believe throughout the EU, Google has pulled back these AI medical summaries, maybe globally. We got to double check because there's real worry about the accuracy of these things. All right, now this is not quite the same, but the story sort of made us chuckle, although it's interesting. So like recursive self-improvement, one of the things that Demis Hassabis himself, who I have huge respect for, by the way, like I think if you think of all the lab leaders, Hassabis is, just a fascinating guy. Definitely go watch The Thinking Game if you haven't seen that documentary. Truly, seems to have his heart and their strategy aligned and all this good stuff. All that said, that's still a big statement. But one of the things Hassabis talks a lot about is sort of like self-improvement in science, so that AI science discovery really rapidly escalates. So you would see all sorts of like new discoveries and new research and new publications and new journals emerge where there would be like scientific breakthroughs. So this is sort of like that, but not really.
Yeah, well, this is fake academic journals publishing AI-generated papers and attributing them to real professors.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah, a little bit. So there's a network of fake academic journals masquerading as legitimate publications, and they have published over 100 AI-generated papers. In several cases, these publications falsely attributed articles to real professors at top universities without their consent or knowledge, signaling a growing crisis regarding the future of scientific knowledge.
Okay, well, that one's from NBC News. We'll put that all into the show notes. So yes, there you have it. 4 stories from what we're now calling That's a Pretty Damn Small Foothill.
Yeah.
And look, there's obviously all sorts of cool, great stuff going on, but we have to be balanced and real about this stuff. Now, speaking of which, this is an interesting 2 sides of a coin. This is something that you care a lot about, which is, and this is education adjacent in part because teens are using these tools a lot, like the personal tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, all of which have very strong persistent memory, and memory gets quote unquote better all the time. And there's a little bit of a tease, I think, that, folks are working with AI in education would also like to see memory deployed a little bit because it would know a kid well over time and could be a more effective support or tutor. But what we're finding in the real world is that this gets complicated. So this is from the Wall Street Journal. Your chatbot has a long memory. That isn't always a good thing. What is the journal uncovering here?
That there are drawbacks of the persistent memory features in major AI chatbots like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Microsoft Copilot. Like you said, the long-term memory is designed to create a more personalized and intelligent assistant, but it latches onto all of that data, which could be outdated, misunderstood, sensitive, and then it skews future search results or career advice or behavioral suggestions without the user realizing that it's going back to that data. We were doing a professional learning together and you did the say, what do you know about me? And it was like, you're ready to have twins. And you're like, nope, no, I'm not having twins.
Definitely not having twins. It said you have a 3-year-old.
Oh, yes.
And you're having twins. And I almost dropped dead.
Yes, yes.
But then what was going on there? It's a perfect example.
I think you and Cam were using the same account for work, and Cam at the time had a 3-year-old and was having twins. And so then, you ask it another question, and now it's it's pulling all of this data from both of the things that you have both put in there. And if it's using that in the back of its mind almost to give you advice, you could see how that might skew advice if you ask for something like a workout plan. If it's thinking you are pregnant with twins and have a 3-year-old, like it's going to give you a very different workout plan than what your personal needs may be.
Frankly, I could use a workout plan for someone who's pregnant with twins. But yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's interesting too because, I mean, look, that's an edge case, although I think a lot of people share accounts. Cam and I have stopped doing that. So I think that was ChatGPT. So you can't come after us anyhow because we've already deleted all our ChatGPT accounts. But yeah, sometimes I share stuff on my personal Gemini that's about one of my kids, and it holds on to that. And I have to explicitly say, like, no, this is not me. This is my child. So, like, keep that data segregated. My vitamin D level is just fine. Thank you very much. They also seem to hold on to, it's interesting what they hold on to. So, like, things that have a lot of emotional weight, like, you know, expressions of real anxiety, episodes in life where there's struggle. I have a weird one. Does this happen to you? Have you had stuff where you're like, no, this isn't, like, don't keep talking about this topic. It's not important.
Yeah, sometimes, especially if you forget to like completely start a new conversation, it'll just bring in old stuff. And I'm like, wait, I just asked about like meal planning and you're talking about it in relation to like a lesson plan I've just done. Or like, yeah, I mean, I think it definitely can bring in old stuff. And I'm like, that's so old.
Yeah. Gemini is obsessed with the work that we're doing on the screen shift, which is a screen time project that we're doing. And so whenever I'm working on anything, it's like, well, you know, as we know from your screen shift work, I'm like, dude, this is like a whole nother thing. Right. I don't need to talk about the screen shift right now. There are things that users can do so they can manually review and delete. You know, there's all these tools now, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. And these really tend to be in the personal, not the school-based accounts, because the school-based accounts are like, I don't know you, I don't know anything about you, which some people are delighted by. But you've got, you know, memory management where you can sort of say, you can either say in the context window, hey, like, stop talking about that. But more effectively, you go into settings, go into manage memory, and you can be able to deal with that. But yeah, this is interesting. And I think, again, it's an important thing to understand as teens are using these tools independently on their own, discovering their strengths and their challenges, but also if there comes a time where we start thinking about AI's, you know, generative AI's function in terms of memory in school-based applications and ed tech applications, we obviously have to be super, super careful.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about, like, if I continue, you know, if the way the world continues is that I continue to use this Gemini account for 15 years, right? Like, I think about a kid using it starting at 15 to 30, like how much their life changes. And if it's pulling data from when they were 15, like, I don't want anybody pulling data from when I was 15 to give me advice about when I'm 30.
It's a two-sided coin, though. I mean, I saw a piece on NBC News where I was like tearing up because it was a thing where the student actually coordinated this thing where they took like photos and captured narrative about their peers in these like 5, 10, 15, 20, 35-year increments or whatever it was. I think they're all in college now. And it was like really, really sweet and interesting. And you could look back. So, yeah, I mean, this can be interesting. But the more we have tools that are going to capture a lot of ambient stuff having in our lives, pendants, pens, whatever, it's going to get really interesting. Yeah, so it may be helpful if our AI is captured using pendants or pens or watches or eyeglasses or earbuds, because we're a little frustrated with the screens right now. So this is new. Pretty much every week now, we're talking about this in some important way. And those who are really interested in AI fluency and literacy have to weigh what's happening around screen time just in the public zeitgeist, right? So this is from K-12 Dive, although it showed up lots of different places. The AFT president urges bans on screens and student-facing AI for the youngest learners. So this is Randy Weingarten. What do we have here?
Yeah, so she is the president of American Federation of Teachers, and she introduced a 10-point plan calling for a complete ban on screens in schools for preschool through second grade and a prohibition on student-facing AI tools in all elementary schools. The proposal aims to counter negative trends in student achievement and skill development caused by excessive technology exposure while still allowing educator-led AI integration and professional training.
The title of the 10-point plan is catchy.
Yeah, devices down, eyes up, hands on.
Devices down, eyes up. I don't know. It feels very like factory model teacher in the front of the room. But, you know, I think the AFT at some level is a political organization. The sentiment here is growing, and it's becoming especially clear how families are feeling. And so it's funny because the AFT has this huge like academy that they built with Google and Microsoft and do also things to the National Academy for AI Instruction's $23 million partnership and Anthropic to train 1 in 10 teachers in AI fluency. And they're not really talking here about the teacher stuff, but the AFT doubled down on AI a year ago or less,
Right.
and now is doubling down on screen time for sure.
Yeah, but she did say, like, she's not demanding for an outright AI ban or a Chromebook bonfire because AI is here to stay.
Book bonfire.
But she does, she insists on enforceable guardrails,
Yeah.
which is still hard. You've got to define screen time. Does that mean showing a video of, whales breaching when you're talking about, large mammals? Like,
Probably not, because if it's devices down, eyes up, that would be eyes up and watch the film reel. Can you hear the little noise?
I can.
Are you old enough?
Yeah.
Did you have film reels in the
Yeah,
back?
I did. And then when it finishes,
The no elementary school student-facing AI, I thought that was already the plan.
yeah, I think that is very much the plan. And I think, again, we also think about school is 6 hours of the day and
Sure.
what kids are doing at home. These parents that are so concerned about it, then I don't want to see kids in the supermarket looking at screens while their parents are food shopping. I don't want to see kids on screens when they're riding in the backseat of the car for 30 minutes.
Can you imagine you're the parent and you're driving the car and you go, devices down, eyes on the road? It's like, come on, let's be real.
There's just so much. Parents use screens so much for their kids now. And, my kids always say, we weren't iPad kids. We weren't allowed to use that. And we used to play all kinds of games in the car and whatever. And now that they're teenagers and they are on their phones in the car, our car rides are silent.
Yeah, but the under 13, generally I'm finding that most schools are sort of saying, we're really not going to do student-facing AI below 13 based on, a myriad of federal and state laws. But at the same time, you and I know a lot of districts that are using wrappers and other tools down in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So it will get really interesting. Now, the AFD proposed along with this, again, this feels like something that's getting ready for the midterm elections here in the United States. So this is a tech tax. It's a 1% gross revenue levy on the largest U.S. corporate firms, designed to raise $5 billion. Revenue is going to go towards PD and physical classroom resources for the hands-on part of the devices down, eyes up, hands-on portion. They're not the only one. Even Dario Amodei from Anthropic himself has talked about a token tax. But, this is part of a much larger political landscape that's feeling a little anti-tech right now. So they're like, let's extract a couple bucks.
Yeah.
All right, Liz, here's a glass half full perspective when it comes to older students, right? So these are meaning kids over 13 where we know that they need to develop AI fluency and literacy. So this is the School Superintendents Association. This is from the 74. And they're going to do a really cool thing this summer between superintendents and students in their respective regions and school districts.
Yeah, so the initiative pairs 50 superintendents with 100 students from all 50 states to collaborate with MIT experts and draft a student-led national AI policy for public schools. I'm so excited to see the outcome of this. So they are launching this national fellowship, bringing together 50 school leaders from every state, and then each school leader is going to bring 2 students from their state. And they are going to be at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate to serve as student senators. So these student senators are going to draft a national AI policy for the responsible, productive, and ethical use of artificial intelligence in public schools, which will be shared with AASA's network of over 10,000 district leaders.
Yeah, super cool. This is a strategy that you and I are just could not be more behind.
And what a cool opportunity for students. And they're probably going to get to do all kinds of really neat stuff.
Yeah. If you're a soup that's involved in this in any way and bringing kids, let us know.
Oh, we would love to talk.
Love to chat with you. Love to chat with your students. We could do a whole little Riverside recording. I think this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So finally, Liz, in the rundown here, this is a Beyond the Bot story about kids using AI to solve real world problems, but it is a standout school that we have a lot of history with right here in our region.
Yeah. So that's New Haven's Engineering and Science University Magnet School, affectionately called ESUMS.
Yeah. So what do they do? And actually, the teacher that's involved in this project, we work closely with.
Team Sentia has masterfully bridged academic knowledge with real world impact to developing a sophisticated AI-driven solution to a profound human challenge, is what Dr. Pushpendra Panchal said.
Who we just called Push, if I remember correctly.
We did. We just called him Push. So they created a functioning visual prosthesis utilizing advanced vision language models and optical imaging for real-time hazard detection for people that are visually impaired.
So cool.
It's this wearable navigation system that was developed with university researchers, tech entrepreneurs. They had all kinds of collaboration with ESUMS, SCSU, Southern Connecticut State University, iHub, and the Yale Ventures team. This is all part of their Project Lead the Way engineering capstone curriculum. And as an engineering and science university magnet school, their engineering stuff and the real world problems that I've been watching them solve for 10 years, you for a little longer, our team for even longer. It is always just incredible.
Yeah, so keep up the good work, Push and the team, and the folks at Yale and Southern, and our dear friend, Dr. Christine Broadbridge. I think that's how I saw this on LinkedIn. It might have been Medria, the principal as well.
Medria Blue, the principal.
Yeah. And there's a principal, by the way, that has been at this work and a champion of students solving real world problems. And the trajectory of their kids have been amazing, right? And these are all sorts of kids. This is not like an elite, charter school or a 2-hour learning model. This is a school in the middle of New Haven. Actually, we're in Hamden now.
No, they are they're on the campus of the University of New Haven.
That's right.
It's an inter-district magnet school, which means it pulls kids from not just New Haven, but from the surrounding area. And I mean, we have just been blown away by some of the projects that have come out of ESUMS for a long time.
Yeah, nice balance of gender too. Like if we'll put the link to the show notes, and there's a whole story about the kids, but you'll see it's like half young women, half young men.
Awesome.
Yeah, really cool. Congratulations, ESUMS, Push, and the whole team. All right, as promised, we are so psyched. I've been waiting for this one for a while. So we are being joined by David Adams, the CEO of Urban Assembly in New York. Dave, I don't know if you know this, but well over a year ago, we saw a story maybe in the 74 or something talking about you and Project Cafe. And that's when I reached out to you, but I was like, Liz, this is so cool. We need to chat about this. So welcome to ChatEDU. We appreciate you making some time.
Thanks so much. And I do know it because we connected right after that. And that's how we're in conversation today. We've been doing some great work in Connecticut, following your work in terms of AI innovation. So this is just right place, right time, right uniform, almost inevitable that we connected in this space in this way.
Well said. I like it. Yeah. So if you don't mind, let's just jump in with tell us about you, tell us about Urban Assembly. Yeah.
Sure. David Adams, Chief Executive Officer at the Urban Assembly. We are a nonprofit that looks to solve problems and scale solutions. So we do that by partnering with districts like New York City Public Schools, where we designed 22 schools around the principles of social emotional learning, instructional quality, and post-secondary readiness and access. And then we work with our schools to identify problem sets and then scale solutions from our schools to all schools. So we're excited to be here. 5 years as CEO. I've been focusing on the social emotional learning side around how do we support schools and organizing around the principles of social and emotional development. On a post-secondary readiness side, how do we ensure that students have the right information to support their post-secondary decision-making? And on the instructional quality side, how do we get more feedback to more teachers for less money?
So based out of New York City, but also working in a number of different places, right? What does that look like?
We're based out of New York, and our 22 Urban Assembly design schools are in New York City. The Urban Assembly School for Media Studies, Urban Assembly Gateway School for Technology, those are all in New York. So when you come to New York, visit our Urban Assembly School, it'll say UA or reflect our design principles. But you don't have to be a UA school to work with our solutions. So we've done work in LA County, we've done work in Chicago, we do work in Connecticut. Anybody can take a solution from the Urban Assembly and apply it to a problem set that they're working on, whether that's post-secondary readiness and access, social emotional development, or instructional quality.
Neat. What were you doing before coming to Urban Assembly?
Well, I've been at Urban Assembly for about 12 years, so I put some time into the place. But before that, I was social emotional learning coordinator in District 75 here in New York City, which is our special education district for our students with high needs.
All right, neat. So listen, I think there's lots of good stuff to talk about, right, Liz? But the thing that caught our attention originally was this Project Cafe. And that was the tease that we put in the beginning of the show. So catch us up on that. What is it? Where did it come from? Where are you at? And we'll kind of unpeel from there.
The Urban Assembly has been thinking about instructional quality for a very long time. We know that the most important lever for student outcomes in a school is teacher quality. And so the question is, how do we improve teacher quality at scale? Now, one of our schools have been looking to support teacher quality, and they started videotaping their teachers and giving the teachers feedback, and they saw that actually it was very effective. But the problem is that the instructional coach could only work with 1 or 2 teachers per year, because the whole process is about 3 hours. You got to watch the tape. You got to like identify really areas of strength. You got to talk to the teacher. So the question became, what would it take to increase frequency? So we define that as a resource problem. We think that teachers don't get enough feedback because it's too expensive. The expense is in the labor. And so we refined and defined the problem as how might we decrease the labor associated with instructional feedback. So our solution was using AI to capture really high quality moments of interaction for the instructional coach or the teacher themselves, so that the time is repurposed from coding classroom instructions and interactions to interacting with the teacher around the actual things that matter. And we kept compressing this problem set of time and said, okay, as opposed to using the classroom as the unit of feedback, let's use the instructional interaction itself. So instead of saying like good classroom, bad classroom, let's just talk about effective question, less effective question, effective redirection, less effective. And then you're probably asking, like, how do you know what's effective? And that goes to the teacher or the instructional coach themselves. So we reflect back about a 10 to 20-second clip around an instructional interaction, open-ended questions, redirections, time cues. And then we prompt the teacher or the instructional coach to think about how did this impact student learning? So to take it from the beginning, teachers need more feedback. But why aren't teachers getting more feedback? Because there's not enough time to give them feedback. But why isn't there enough time? Because there's not enough people. Why isn't there enough people? Because people are expensive. Why are people expensive in this context? Because the labor of watching classrooms drives the time that it takes to get effective feedback. If we can collapse that labor, we can make it so that teachers get more feedback more frequently, and that the time is repurposed from coding, watching, to interacting, developing, reflection.
Wow, that is really powerful. Just the way you broke it all down is so interesting. Explain a little bit more about it. So does the teacher is videotaped for kind of the whole class period or the instructional part, and then the AI is pulling the most important moments?
It's a great question. So Liz, we identified pre-existing drivers of student learning. We know that quality questions, for example, are predictive of student learning. We know teacher talk time are predictive of student talk time, predictive of student learning to a certain extent. We know redirections in terms of classroom organization. We know the quality of previews, how well a teacher constructs expectations, instructional and or behavioral. We know for sure that the quality of summaries, how well teachers operate on students' ideas and create visibility around students' ideas for others to do work on, drive student thinking. So these things are already established, right? The question is, how do we make them more visible to the teacher and to the instructional coach so that we can do cognitive work on these ideas in terms of our reflection? So what the AI is doing is capturing these interactions. It's saying, Liz, that was a preview. That was a summary. That was a redirection. That was an open-ended question. That was a time cue. And then the teacher and or instructional coach are going back and reflecting, okay, well, how did that time cue organize space and time in the classroom? How did my talk time create space or not for student thinking to emerge? So what the AI is doing is not passing judgment, good question, bad question. It's saying question. And then we, as the humans, as the instructional coaches, are then saying, and the quality of this question either drove student thinking or maybe we missed a mark on that. So you can think about it as automating observation so that we can create meaning out of what we're seeing.
And then that reduces the time that you need to observe, right? Because previously without AI, I'm assuming even if you videotaped it, you would have to have the instructional coach or whatever watch the whole video to look for it. So that's how we're really compressing the time is the AI can help and say at minute 5:26, this happened. Okay, so that's really neat.
And just to make a small nuance, so the AI says at minute 5:27, that was an open-ended question. What the instructional coach or the teacher receives is that question itself. So they don't see the entire classroom because we're really operating on the unit of interaction rather than the classroom itself. And it does something else, and this is outside of the constraints, but it shifts the focus from like, am I good? Am I bad? To how well did that interaction drive student thinking, right? 10 seconds, you don't get like caught up in like Do I stand in the class? Does that what my voice sounds like in real life, right? Like, why did I wear that outfit? What's the student doing in the corner? How well did that question drive student thinking? 10 seconds, focus on that. And it's compressing the amount of time for the teacher themselves. Instead of having the teacher review the entire class and start to think about, did I feel good? Did I feel bad? Overwhelming, 10 seconds. How well did this redirection bring students back to the learning objective?
In the overview video of Project Cafe, you do this great like analogy around sports film and getting feedback.
Yes.
Can you kind of drill down on that a little bit, especially with these like slices? Because at some level, you know, if I am looking at a tape from a game, am I looking at slices? Am I looking at, you know, kind of whole runs or?
Yeah, man. So shout out to the New York Knicks who are in the NBA years.
I don't know when this airs, but I think it's Friday. So
right, you know, we gotta love our home team. And so, like, if you think about an inbound play for basketball, which is when there's a stoppage of play and the teams are putting the ball into play again. This inbound play is really, really important because you're going to have to do it 4 or 5 times, maybe 14 or 15 times in the game. And if you can do it well, you can score. If you don't do it well, you may not score. So teams practice inbound plays. In baseball, they practice where the shortstop throws in different positions in terms of base people on base. In football, you look at your third down conversions. So it's not to say that other things don't matter, but there are things that can predict how well a team will be successful. Let me just throw it in, free throws, basketball, right? If you hit your free throws, you're more likely to win. So what we're trying to condense is the highest leverage moves in instructional interactions so that the teachers can master those effectively, so that they have room to start to think about the nuances, right? So I like to say this is not everything that happens in the classroom. It may not even be the most important aspects of what's happening in the classroom, but they are the highest leverage things that are happening in the classroom to do well. Questioning, redirections, summarizing, previews. There's lesson planning in there too. We don't capture that. There are spaces where a teacher may be thinking about how well my pacing relates to my planning. Very important. We're really looking at this third down conversion, inbound pass, two men on base, those key interactions that drive success in the classroom or in sports.
And who gets to see it? Like, or it's not really who gets to see it, but who is this for? Is it for my principal? Is it for the teacher? Is it evaluative? Is it just like personal informative?
Project Cafe is designed for teachers by teachers. So while you can share with an instructional coach or an outside person, it's very much designed to be professional development, not performance evaluation. Going back to this question of watching tape, you want to watch tape to improve your performance for the next game. Nobody's going back and being like, I'm rating your performance on the tape. You're going to rate your performance in the actual game, right? And so Project Cafe is designed for teachers and their supports to develop their ability to drive high quality instructional practices and interactions with precision and consistency for the teacher, not for anybody else.
How the teacher's feeling? Like, give us a feel for, I mean, I know there's a lot. How many teachers have been involved? And what are the vibes, David?
We got about 180 teachers right now who've used the system in the last year or so. And we're looking to expand to about 500 teachers by the end of actually this summer, because we're working with partners like City Teaching Alliance and Teach for America, and of course our own urban assembly schools, as well as folks in Rhode Island. And we have a range of folks' feedback. So in the urban assembly, a lot of our teachers are saying things like, this is the first time I feel like a professional, because I am able to look at my own practice, identify areas of strength and challenges, and then work on those strengths and challenges without anybody looking over my shoulder. It's not a question of who is the instructional expert. It's a question of how do I develop myself. We see folks saying things like the ability to see myself helps me think about how to organize my practice effectively. So one of our teachers was looking at student-teacher talk time, and she said, I was doing a lot of the talking, And then when I looked at the type of talking I was doing, I realized that my talking was really designed to be pushing student thinking as I moved from group to group. So because it was picking up on like my movement from group to group, I felt good about the talk I was doing, right? And this is the kind of nuance that you can develop when you're not judging teachers. You're not saying reduce your talk time to 20, 80%. We're saying use your talk to push students' thinking, and here's your talk time as reflected in this metric. And that kind of nuance is what we need in education to show our teachers how to be the professionals that we believe they can be. Instead of like slamming, pushing, you missed this, you're not doing this, giving frequent opportunities for teachers to reflect is going to drive their ability to understand the dynamics of what's going on in the classroom. And I'll say one last thing about this, Matt. Most of what we do in teaching is not about right or wrong. It's about balancing different aspects of the classroom environment in order to achieve an end state or effect across the classroom. So what we're trying to do with Project Cafe is not tell them good, bad, right, wrong. It's take some time to reflect on all the things that are happening in that moment and think about how your interaction either supported student thinking, kept it neutral, or made it harder for students to be effective. And that's the idea of Project Cafe, and that's how we're trying to solve that problem.
Yeah. I have a million other questions, but I'm wondering about the frequency that teachers are recording themselves. So do they have some choice in what they record, when they record, how frequently they record?
So from our data, we're seeing that the most effective use of Project Cafe is with 5 or more recordings. That's where we see the most growth. When teachers got to 10 or more recordings, they made even stronger growth. Our teachers who did 2 recordings made some growth, but weren't as strong as our teachers who did more recording. Now, we're trying to balance privacy here because we want our teachers to do what they want to do in terms of frequency with effectiveness, which is we see the more teachers record and get feedback, the more quickly they grow. So we're thinking about ways of supporting our teachers to understand and making it easier for them to reflect on their practice more effectively. So we want to get right now to about once a week for our teachers to be able to maximize the value of the tool. And we're trying to think about how to support our teachers to do that while maintaining privacy in terms of their ability to reflect and choose when they want to use the tool.
How easy is it for them to record? Do they have to like set up a camera? Do they have to put on a mic? Or is it just like a Zoom recording?
So they have like an iPad or a tablet. They put on a mic, they put on a tripod, and then they press record. And then the system records what's going on. And at the end, they'll press upload if they want to upload. And then it'll go to the system in about 24 hours. They'll get all their metrics. So we see setup is about 3 to 5 minutes. But in reality, like 3 to 5 minutes is a very long time in the classroom kind of context. So we're also working with teachers to think about like how might students set up the tool? How might we stick it on the wall? The implementation is something that we're continuing to refine because it is a friction point in getting teachers to execute it. We see our feedback is the number one reasons teachers don't record is they haven't found time in their schedule to kind of like set the tool up and then press record. So we need to solve for that.
It's funny because as you think about what all Johnny Ive and all these people are working on, pendants, these like ambient systems that are just going to collect data all around us, which I think open up a lot of questions for parents and kids about this. But a couple of weeks ago, we did an episode on Jevon's paradox, right? This idea that sometimes when technology makes things that have been hard to do, there's all these constraints. I love when you went through what felt like 5 whys, right? On like, why is this hard to do? So as technology, in this case, AI, can make something easier, you can scale it and the volume winds up being helpful. Is there, given that, is there like an upper ceiling for this? If you could get the friction out of the way, was it good to just be doing this as much as possible? Or
I've seen people upload 25 videos in a year. And these are folks who are doing, these are teacher prep folks who were working to develop their skills, not before they went into the classroom, but as they were doing their student teaching, right? I will say there's not a constraint in terms of resources. It doesn't cost a lot to record and upload the video, right? And to Liz's earlier point, one of the things that we're actually doing is we have a peer-to-peer sharing. So like Matt, I might share my questioning techniques with you. And you might be like, yo, Dave, that was a really bomb question, man. Did you see how well students really thought about the learning objective, right? And so even then creating peer circles of reflection starts to think about socializing high quality practice. So no, there's not like a resource constraint. Like by the time we get to 10 videos, we run out of water. um, that's an AI data center. Yeah. So and to the extent that like a teacher's uploading more frequently and more people are talking about their practice, we're going to see faster improvements for teachers at scale, because we're no longer constrained by, Liz has to drive to my school, Liz has to watch my class, and Liz has to then like debrief with me in my prep period. And those are all things, our time is money, money's constraints. And we no longer need to abide by those constraints to improve public education. So no upper limit from my knowledge. Maybe OpenAI or Anthropic's going to call me and be like, your token use, David, is too high. Where we need the Hudson River to stay populated, but currently no upper constraints.
So once you put a video camera in classrooms, all kinds of things can change. The same way when a principal walks in a classroom, right? So how do parents feel? Do parents need to like sign off on the camera being there? And then do you see, or how do students react? Do teachers think they change their behavior? Do they eventually forget about the camera? So what are you seeing from parents and students just with the presence of a camera?
The way we do this is that all parents are notified that the cafe is being used in the classroom. And typically speaking, we see parents react positively, particularly when the focus is on teacher professional development, right? So we're not capturing student behavior, as it were. We're not trying to surveil the class. We are working to develop teachers' feedback by giving them opportunities to reflect on their practice. And I think from my experience, most parents are like, this is for the teacher. Great. They want to be a better teacher for my kids. Fantastic. So that's been the general kind of space where we've been in those conversations. With regards to the students, and this is interesting, usually the first couple of times teachers are like, I'm gonna kick butt. I'm gonna teach the best class ever so I can get these really good metrics and feel good about myself, right? And there's two pathways to this. First is this like mere exposure effect. Even if you are performing for the camera and you videotape more frequently, you're performing high quality interactions. And so you can be better just by saying, I want to make sure my metrics on talk time reflect the ability for students to have time to think. And I've seen when I go to urban assembly schools, students are like talking into the mic and they're like, Liz or Mrs. Rede, did I say your last name right? Mrs. Rede, I have more talk time. Now, this is kind of a silly kind of reflection, but what our teachers say is when they wear the mic, they become more conscious of how they're moving through the space. So like there's a thing that's happening where by delivering feedback, teachers become more sensitive to their interactions, which then increase the frequency of those interactions. Now, the secondary effect is like, as they do it more, they get back to closer to their average and their default. And as they get to their default and the average, the feedback helps improve that average to a level of frequency that supports high quality teaching and learning in the classroom. And indeed, we see over time, teachers who use Cafe more create more participation in their classroom. They use more summaries. They do more work on student ideas. They're more likely to use previews to organize classroom time. And we see kind of student participation increasing between 15 and 20% across all users in about a year of usage, going up as teachers use more Cafe. So the goal is not to like put out your best performance ever, but even if that is a thing that happens, the more you do your best performance, the higher quality instruction that students are receiving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. One quick logistics thing, like how's it deal with, I know AI is so good on languages and accents and translation, but how are you finding that so far? And is that a metric that you're tracking? Is it changing for kids that speak a different language or just, accents and the whole bit?
We haven't tracked it for kids who have spoken a different language, but we have tracked it for languages, for classrooms in different languages like Spanish. We've seen that the metrics are reliable in Spanish classes, and predict equally well in those classes as they do in English language classes. But we haven't yet said, and so how are students performing in those spaces?
There's like so many interesting things to chat with you about. We covered the counselor tool a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. That was super interesting. But I can't help, given your background in SEL and the intersection between AI and SEL around things like sycophancy and AI companions, a whole constellation of stuff, right? We noticed that you just became affiliated more formally with the Rhythm Project, which we are just
Love
huge.
them.
I'm playing I don't know about you, Liz, but I'm playing the AI Effect card game like everywhere I go.
No, and people have been posting on it on LinkedIn a ton, and I'm like, yes, it's the best.
So what's the Dave Adams take on like AI and kids' emotional health right now in this whole interesting opportunity and complexity at the same time?
Well, Matt, let me answer this in two ways. For CAFE itself, one of the metrics that we look at is positive climate. And we measure that with the use or frequency of respectful language and encouraging language in the classroom. And one of the things that we saw was that the most sensitive metric in terms of growth over time was respectful language. Teachers made more growth in respectful language and than any other metric on CAFE. Why is that important? We're using AI to equip teachers to interact with students in ways that create students' sense of belonging and high quality positive climate. And that's the way we think about AI at the Urban Assembly. I want to invest in people and use AI to create spaces where we can invest in people to develop human relationships of high quality, not to replace human relationships with AI relationships. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because there's been a lot of work now on not only the character of AI. If you look at Anthropic and their 80 constitution spaces, like who is AI, which is great. But like, if we can do that for AI, we should be asking who are our children, who do we want them to be? Same thing with social emotional skills. A lot of work going into AI around developing emotional intelligence, developing skills for social interactions, because there's an ROI on that insofar as if you are equipping your AI to be competent in social interactions, like with agents, then those agents can do more with less prompting, right? And so, my whole big thing is like if it's good enough for silicon, it's good enough for our children. If we're investing in the social emotional development of chatbots and agents, we should have no reason not to be investing in the social emotional development of our actual children who need to solve actual problems in actual bodies, not just agents that are developed by zeros and ones. So our focus is on enabling young people, enabling teachers, enabling society to participate in the kind of interactions in the social emotional domain that drive thriving, that drive a sense of purpose. And so when you look at CAFE, you see we're not saying interact with this tool. We're saying let this tool show you what you're doing and then interact with an instructional coach or your best friend teacher or your teacher mentor around your interactions in the classroom to drive judgment and understanding of what high quality instructional outcomes should be. And I just want to say that last time, right? The goal of CAFE is to drive interaction around high quality instructional interactions. It's not for AI to be like good, bad. It's not for you to tune yourself to your rating that AI gave you. It's to talk to other people about your practice so that you gain judgment around what high quality instruction could and should look like in your own classroom.
Yeah, I love that. And just that emphasis on like the AI is not then coaching you. A human is coaching you. The AI is just pulling the data. It's not then saying, try this, next time do that. It's really, now you have the data, now go talk to somebody else about it.
Surfacing, right? It surfaces trends and patterns so that you don't have to, it's like, I don't think you should be spending your time transcribing every interaction in the classroom. That's like not a good use of your skills, right? What's a great use of your skills is talking about what you saw with Matt or with me and trying to develop judgment around increasing frequency of high quality interactions, because I trust you, Liz. I trust you, Matt. I have a relationship with you and I want to be better in my instructional outcomes. We shouldn't displace these relationships to silicon, right? I'll throw one more idea here. It's like bedtime stories. Like, AI could read your child a bedtime story. In fact, there's been self-reading books for a while, right? You know, you're like, hey, Matt, I had a long day. Take this self-reading book and like you can read Alice's in Wonderland by yourself. It's misunderstanding the point of bedtime stories, right? The point of bedtime stories have a shared reference point where you're building a relationship with your child. So when you don't understand the problem you're solving, you apply solutions that misunderstand or misinterpret what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Bedtime stories are about relationships. Coaching is about relationship plus practice. Teaching is about human development, structured human development, and that belongs to people.
I love the way that you've attacked this problem, because you could also look at the time problem and say instead, well, the problem is there's not enough time for instructional coaches. So I'm going to videotape and I'm going to feed the transcript in, and AI is going to do some coaching. And now the person is going to get more feedback, right? And we could throw a transcript in once a week and the person's going to get more feedback. But then you have taken the humanity out of it. You've solved the problem. It's the same problem, but you haven't solved it in a way that drives relationships and that is the most effective. And you are handing the problem over to Silicon Valley to solve it. And here we are still using AI to solve the problem, but in a very different way. And I think that's the nuance that we really have to keep thinking about, because there are other ways to solve the problem of time and human capacity and capability, but you kept the humans not just in the loop, like you used AI for what it's best at and keeping humans doing what they're best at. So I love that.
In an environment, I want to be fair and say, like, in an environment, part of what's so cool about urban assembly and some of the network schools in the city in general, right, is that they're well resourced. Well, I mean, I'm sure every school is going to say, like, I don't know, but that model is built on having that coaching infrastructure. I imagine when you pick up and you go to New Britain or you go to Danbury, you go wherever, they may or may not have that same coaching infrastructure. So that winds up having to be almost like a reminder at a leadership level. Any superintendents listen to the podcast right now that this is, requires a really significant human investment too. You've maximized that human investment. You've made it more efficient.
Right.
But it's still got to be there.
There are a couple of ways to think about this, right? If you think about peer-to-peer reflections, it also operates on the time constraint, right? If there is some level of knowledgeable other and we're sharing our clips, we can socialize effectiveness within the teaching kind of space. And then Liz, to your point, I know this is kind of controversial, but like, I don't trust AI to pass judgment on what's happening in classrooms, because a teacher is making a lot of decisions all the time. And most of these decisions are on how to balance X against Y. There are all these tensions, right? Pacing versus depth. Like there's all these things that are going on. And I'm just not confident that I'm going to use an algorithm to give a teacher feedback without the requisite context. I'm confident that I can pick up a time cue reliably using AI. I can measure that and say that's a time cue. I'm not confident that Cafe should come to Matt and say, you're using too many time cues or you're using not enough time cues. That takes thinking. It takes judgment. What I want to do is I want to develop that judgment within the teacher. So once AI says good, bad, then the teacher is outsourcing their thinking to good time cues, bad time cues. Well, how do you know? Well, because that's what the rating said. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's dumb. You know what I mean? That's like, it's stupid. It's taking away our agency in making good judgments around what we're doing in the classroom. So I wanted to really appreciate what you're saying here, Liz, because I get asked all the time, why don't you just tell them what's a good question? Why don't you just make them like, what percentage of open-ended questions do I need to do well? Well, it really depends on how well students are attending to your questioning, right? Let's say you ask 4 low-level questions and then pop them with like, now what's the nature of the universe? Well, good on you. You see? Like the goal is to develop our teachers' judgment, our teachers' reasoning, our teachers' thinking. The goal is not to like use AI to like judge us.
I love that.
I'll give you one last example. Let's say we go into a jury. So one of the things we want to do is we want to understand how juries make decisions, and we want to make sure that they're making good decisions against the facts in the case. But the other thing that we're trying to do is we're using juries to convey legitimacy on the judgment or the sentence, right? And so when you have 12 people, they need to understand information, they need to interpret information, but they also need to come to a consensus, and they need to use that consensus to recommend a judgment for the person who's on trial. Now, you could feed the same information into AI, and AI would probably be able to interpret the facts effectively, right? And say guilty or not guilty. But what it would never be able to do is hold legitimacy in terms of a group of your peers saying, this is how we find your case to be adjudicated. And I want to bring that back to what we're trying to do in education with AI, with Cafe, right? We don't want to outsource judgment to an artificial intelligence. Judgment should come from the people who are responsible for supporting our young people's development. In the same way, a jury could be ChatGPT and be like, well, blah blah blah, Matt, you're going to jail, or you're not guilty. But the goal of a jury is not just to deliver a verdict; it's to deliver legitimacy of a peer group rendering justice on behalf of society. So this is the thing that we got to understand when we talk about could versus should in AI. Our teachers are responsible for the learning outcomes of our students. They need to develop the skills and understandings to drive those learning outcomes. And it needs to come from them. And to the extent that we're doing it in community, it's more legitimate, right? We could do it with AI, but it's solving the wrong problem, which is how to develop the judgment of our teachers. AI doesn't need to develop the judgment. I don't trust the judgment of AI. And what I want is our young people to be in front of caring adults who love, see their work, and can do that effectively over time.
Hallelujah. Yeah. So Project Cafe is really a framework for how you think about, because you guys are working on this in lots of different ways. And again, you're working with Rhythm. This is a framework for how you're thinking about all of AI in education, essentially.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you ever think about becoming a litigator? Because Liz and I were like, wait, this is, what's going to happen? It was exciting.
My father would tell me I would be a good lawyer just because I used to argue a lot about the rules of our house.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to share. Is there, a couple quick things, anything you want folks to know about getting a hold of you? Anything that's on deck that you think people should be familiar with? How do you feel about the traffic light system in New York City? No, just leave that one off. I'm just kidding.
Well, look, if folks want to get in touch with us, just visit Urban Assembly's website, urbanassembly.org, and you can reach out. You can hit me by email, dadams@urbanassembly.org. If you want to work with Project Cafe, if you want to work with Counselor GPT, reach out to us. We're here to help you solve problems. Essentially, Liz and Matt, we're here to solve problems. We're here to solve problems for humanity, on behalf of humanity, in the context of public education, and we're using AI to help us do that.
Yeah. What a great way to end it. Really, really appreciate it, David. Thank you so much for your time and the great work that you're doing. Tell Habib and the whole team back there we say hello.
Will do.
And we're grateful for you.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Whoa, that was a cool conversation.
So cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David Adams, the CEO of Urban Assembly, for joining us. Liz, let's end with a little bright bite, a story where AI is making meaningful contributions to science, culture, society, the environment, all sorts of stuff. And this is a super interesting story. We haven't covered the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation that much. They're doing something that's like, AlphaFold adjacent, but a little bit different. And the timing is interesting because in May, right, a month ago, because this is now June 1st when we're recording, this will come out at the end of the week, Meta initiated a wave of layoffs, about 10% of their entire company, 8,000 people. And the cuts followed a very unfortunate leaked audio clip from late April at an all-hands meeting when CEO Mark Zuckerberg allegedly confirmed that Meta was tracking employees' device activity. We cover this story, including mouse movements, clicks, and screen content to train the AI models, in many cases, of the employees that were going to be let go. So, good time for some good news here.
Yes, let's turn to the good news
Absolutely.
from Chan Zuckerberg.
So they've been building this thing called the BioHub platform, which is a world model, is his favorite thing, but I think you'll be down with this world model.
This one I am.
Yeah, so it's a world model of protein biology, which is sort of similar to AlphaFold 3 or all the AlphaFolds, but they're approaching it a different way. But tell us what's going on here.
Well, proteins are the tiny molecular machines that run almost every process that keeps everything alive.
Cool.
So the new system that they've created can predict the shape of proteins and then design brand new ones in just days instead of months or years it usually takes in a science lab. So this testing shows that AI can design real working proteins to target specific diseases like cancer. So the AI learned complex rules of nature and chemistry completely on its own, simply by studying massive lists of protein building blocks. And then the system can predict complex protein shapes in under 10 seconds, letting scientists test hundreds of thousands of options on a computer in one day, which means that it will shorten the time it takes to find the starting ingredients for new medicines from years down to just a couple of days.
All right, so what question comes to mind? Because you got this and you have AlphaFold, so what do you wonder aloud?
I wonder what the difference is.
Yeah. I mean, I think one is borrowed heavily from the other, so I don't think this work would have been possible, the BioHub platform, without the work of AlphaFold 1, 2, and 3. But essentially, it's faster, right?
Okay.
It's probably good to have like competing protein folding and creation stuff going on because they'll have different types of innovation. The big difference is that AlphaFold, even though it's been shared with researchers across the community, you're still inside Google's walled garden, so they can see what you're doing, and it's kind of a controlled environment. This thing is totally open source. So the weights, the model, it's like a language model for proteins. Totally open source. So anybody can download this and run with it.
So like those kids at eSIMS who
Sure.
probably understand this a whole lot better than me are
Yeah.
going to be solving real world problems.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could run it on your own machines and have like this huge access to protein. The worry, I think, there is that could someone with nefarious intention do something around toxins or biohazards with all this
Can we
kind of...
not give people ideas?
Oh, sorry. There's nothing bad you can do.
That's right.
And with that, it must be time to...
Roll the credits. As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at ChatEDU@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the Executive Director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our Educator and Leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to ChatEDU.